This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Guns Rust Podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are. And today is a good one. It is, as Arscast would say, a goodly morning. It is a lovely morning because we won the pre-season friendly / Super Cup / Community Shield. However you want to look at it, it was certainly a great performance and something that we're going to have to digest today and kind of maybe analyse. There's lots of talking points. There's lots of positive talking points. There's a couple, I wouldn't say negatives, but maybe question marks. But majority, I'd say this is a massively positive episode, as this episode, the show's supposed to be. But we're going to break it all down from team news to transfers to the performances to what it means, how City looked, how this was all taken by other fans. It will be interesting. But today's episode will nearly completely comprise of just the Community Shield. And then Wednesday, I'm going to do my predictions for the year ahead in the Premier League. I'm going to do all 20 positions. I'm going to do Golden Boot, Golden Glove, Breakout Star, Young Player, all this kind of stuff. I'll kind of come up with it on Wednesday, so you can kind of play along and kind of come up with your ideas. Let us know, obviously, anywhere on TBA Wrestling. That's our socials. Gunners Russ on TikTok. But here on iTunes and Spotify, give us a 5-star review. Amazon Music, YouTube. We are TBA Wrestling on YouTube. But you just look up Gunners Rush. You'll find the YouTube of this episode every 2 times a week. But if you want more than 2 times a week, go to our Patreon. Click the link below this audio. Sign up there. It's about £6 a month. You'll get multiple more audios a week. You'll put you in a raffle for a graded Arsenal card every single month. So you could win something up to £100 every single month. And that's it, really. But today, Community Shield. I said before in the preview episode that I've released everywhere that it's a win-win. It's a free hit to an extent because you lose its motivation. We got to work on these things. It's unfortunate, but also there's things like only one team in the last 15 years or 20 years have gone on to win the league after winning the Community Shield. So very rare. So sometimes there is a negative that comes with this. That's all just kind of optics. But you lose, and you kind of, we've got some work to do. We need to get into the transfer market a little bit more. Maybe all our players aren't available, so, and they weren't. So you can kind of have quote-unquote excuses. But once I saw the way City played, I realised that it wasn't a win-win. It wasn't a free hit. Because if I was a City fan, I would feel very differently after that game. Because as far as before the game, when this team news came out, I think everyone pretty much unanimously online said, yeah, City have gone for that. It'd be hard for Arsenal to win that, but fair play to City for going for it. So to see that the result, the 3-0, the manner of it, I think is even more alarming for a City fan. And again, Elliot Anderson wasn't fit. Haaland hasn't kicked a ball yet. Until then, he clearly wasn't fit. There were certain things like that, but there was certain level of style to the City performance that really did worry me. So we will get to that. Even the positioning of Elliot Anderson was very strange. It almost like kind of standing behind the right winger, but as like not a right back. Just kind of very close to Semenyo. It was just an interesting choice for a £116 million signing. And again, if you watch that midfield, the battle in midfield, you got Kovacic, Foden, and Elliot Anderson versus Odegaard, Lewis Skelly, and Bruno. I think there was a stark difference. I mean, the level of game that Odegaard performed and what Foden did was night and day. I think Lewis Skelly made himself look like a £200 million signing compared to what Elliot Anderson delivered on the other side. Because again, if you spend that much money, you have someone who's a very experienced player like Kovacic, at a high level, next to a world-class signing like we did with Declan Rice, what they're doing with Elliot Anderson, and a youth prospect, but someone who people have called the best player in England, should have gone to the World Cup, all these kind of things. If you put together that midfield, I don't think an unfit Bruno Guimaraes, who, as everyone tells us, is nearly 29, Odegaard, who Arsenal should sell because he's past it, and a youth prospect in Lewis Skelly, who is just, he's someone who just is a big personality but not a great football player. So to see those two sides and then that midfield battle be absolutely dominated, I think is really interesting. So starting with the team news, because the preview episode I did was literally 5 hours before team news. I got it so close. I went Hincapi over Calafiori. This wasn't necessarily what I wanted. It was just what I thought. I think he kind of finds Hincapi very steady, as you could tell by the fact that we scored in 26 seconds with Calafiori. Not as steady, but a very good player. But the rest of the back five was correct. I said I'd like to see Lewis Skelly, Bruno and Odegaard. We got that because I think it's vertical, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Then Soles on the left, Havertz up front, but I went Dauman. He's got Madueke. It's the one thing that really frustrates me with Arteta is I get that he kind of sees it as like, well, he's a professional. He was a money signing. He's also only played 20 minutes of preseason before this game. After a long, World Cup where he actually played more than Saka and only returned last week or this week, 4 or 5 days ago. For him to get the nod ahead of a guy that we all absolutely adore and a prodigy like Max Dauman at 16, but also a guy who's played the last 4 games in pre-season and got a lot of minutes under his belt and very prepared. I just think, and having watched the game, I don't think we necessarily would have lost anything if he had started. Maybe there's something that we're not seeing, because when you see people like Tuchel and Arteta really like Madueke, you realise like we're obviously fans. We must be missing something. Because in this game particularly, I think we saw Solis in real time figure out what Madueke was. And in real time, we saw the difference between two wingers and what they can kind of produce and what they are. And they are very different players. But it was almost a reminder of, they're, elite wing play is not what we're seeing from Madueke. But Solis got very close to very elite level football playing yesterday. So the lineup, I was pretty close. I'm glad we didn't drop Havertz into midfield for the robustness and put Gyökeres up front. And I think some of this was designed because on the bench, we were missing some players that were quite noticeable. And to be fair, if you'd started Havertz and Gyökeres, the only way he could have gone if you wanted to change it was Moreno up front, because we had no other centre forwards. Same with the left wing. There was no left wingers on the bench. So we almost guaranteed Solis to play the 90. But Eza is there. But without Waneri on the bench, Odegaard didn't really have a backup other than Moreno or Havertz, who's already started. So I think a lot of decisions were kind of made themselves. And Arteta actually spoke really well before the game. And he mentioned that at this point in the project, he has to allow the players to make more decisions than he does. And I think that's really telling. Because this is a guy who man manages. He is a micromanager to almost to a fault. He has ran these guys into the ground with studying and all this stuff. And he's kind of saying, well, they've earned it now. Now they can make those decisions. They understand the project. They understand the concept of how to win. As we know from the Athletic, that all we do is win by DJ Khaled was booming through the walls when Maresca was trying to do his post-match. And I like that, because I think what you'll get from that is more decisions. And I think this is led by actually Eza coming to Arteta near the end of last season, if you remember, and said, you just need to back off a tiny bit. Give us a couple days. We need to know we can do it. We don't need you reminding us, because we know we can do it. We need to remind ourselves. And I think that is kind of bled into this by the looks of it. It's just, he's kind of taken a step back and said, I don't need to be as hands-on. They get it. And you notice that, there was last year, was it Saliba, post a away game in the Premier League that we'd won, he was seen on the bus in the background of an Instagram picture of someone else already watching Atletico's game that we were playing 3 days later or 2 days later, whatever it was. And I said that was not, we didn't ask people to do that. They just did it. And I think that's what's happened. He's almost brainwashed them just about enough that he doesn't need to brainwash them anymore. He just goes, they're already deep in the brainwash. They'll just keep doing it without me now. I can take a step back. And I think that's true. And, the new guys, it's interesting because I thought the way in which Solis played was such an Arteta player, but on the other hand was so unique to how we've seen Arsenal play. I think I'll start there. I think we'll get to. Do I run down the game or do I go through the players? It's so difficult. I'm going to start with Solis. I'm going to just talk about Solis. I thought he was incredible. I really did. He got 2 assists. That play means he's got 7 goals or assists in 6 games in the preseason, including the Community Shield, which I don't think is a preseason game. It is a trophy. It is a Super Cup. And that is my mountain to die on, and I'll stick with it. But he's a machine. He's got 1 goal and 6 assists in 6 games. It's a lot. And I mean, yeah, you could say 4 or 5 of these games were preseason. These were not overly competitive, or maybe a lot more goals than you'd expect. He just played Man City that had 116-pound Elliot Anderson. He had to track Doku. He had to, track Semenyo. He had to be involved in a lot of stuff that is high level. I mean, almost as high level as Premier League gets. Yeah, if in 4 months we play Man City and that performance is the exact same, then even better. So we understand where we're all at as far as fitness and cohesion in the teams, I'd say. So he is working against a weakened City. But I mean, in personnel, not a weakened City. And in personnel, a very good City. And he still managed to track his man. He worked back. He was neat and tidy. That's what I really liked, was when he came back and kind of won the ball. There's a couple of times, Trossard, he's so similar to Trossard. But he would come back, he'd win that ball and he'd be under pressure and he'd just kind of find a space backwards. Just knock it into that without kind of going, oh, there's no player there, I'm going to have to try and take him on and lose the ball. I think he lost the ball once yesterday. On the edge of the box late on, I think he tried like a little kind of flick over someone's head and Semenyo ran onto it. Which is, that's going to happen. People can't be perfect for a game. But he kind of knocked, like if he was running back towards his own goal but on the wing, 2 men on him and 1 man coming towards him, you kind of just bend it around that guy towards Gabriel. But Gabriel wasn't there. Gabriel was kind of in the box. He'd knock it towards the corner flag but like waited so Gabriel can go collect it in more space and then bring the ball up or bring it more central and move it across the other side of the field. But if he could, he was always looking inside to where Odegaard was and Bruno Guimaraes was, and he was looking for that flick around the corner. He was looking for Calafiori in the overlap. And then when he did get forward, this is the bit I really like, because he's not the quickest player, is he's decisive. He makes decisions, and I think this is something that I got frustrated with Trossard, where he picked the ball up kind of in that final third, like maybe just a touch into the final third on the wing. He's looking infield, and he'd stand his man up. He'd look left to go take him on, but he would shift right. And he'd take kind of a yard infield and he'd beat that first man, then beat another guy, then beat another guy. But by this time, he's in his own half and he's kind of between the centre-backs. Then he'd just whip it around. And that's good because, he spreads the play. But it was almost like, well, if you're just, in that first second when you got it, there was an actual opening. There was a 10-second opening. And we noticed this later on in the game with where we ended with Zubimendi, was frustration around him. Because he's such a steady player, Zubimendi, but he's not someone who wants to necessarily always break a line or always do that. And when he came on, it's also a time where probably we shouldn't be trying to break lines. That's a point where the game where you should slow it down. Someone like Zubimendi should come on, he should go sideways, backwards, forward if he has to. But we saw the mentality shift at the end, which I didn't like. Even Declan Rice was accountable for this as well. There was a moment where he got the ball in the kind of left inside channel and we won the ball back high. He had 3 players ahead of him. He had Gyökeres, he had Solis, he had Saka, and I think he even had Odegaard appearing. And it was about a 4-on-3 position. And he kind of shifted his body and tried really hard to beat a man going backwards just to get it all the way back to the goalie. This is from the final third. And he ends up losing the ball and they go on a counter-attack. And I was like, there was no one ahead of you. He actually literally had 20 yards, no one around him in front. Only people behind him. And he chose to go backwards because he was almost in his head like, oh, it's late in the game. We don't need to go for more goals. We need to slow down. But that was actually where the danger was. And we did this last year a couple of times where late in games we were defending leads. We were so intent on going backwards that we got ourselves into trouble because the other team were looking for a goal. So they'd actually put more men forward. Whereas what I like with Solis is he doesn't do that. He seems to make decisions early, and the decision is usually, I need to go forward. I need to go kind of look for link-up play. And the speed in which he makes decisions, when you look at that back post header, I can't imagine Trossard or Martinelli doing that. think it was really good an assist for Havertz. Odegaard puts that ball to the back post, and he just drifts it. He kind of nudges it back to the back post, and Havertz knows what's happening. He already pulls off his man early before he even gets to Solis. But it's such a smart assist. But the second one with Odegaard I really like, because that kind of showed exactly what he did all game. Whereas he gets that ball in the wing, he drives forward a couple yards, he comes infield a couple yards, then he just hits the ball in. There's none of this running to the byline, going across it and going, no one's there. Because what we've seen from Trossard at times, and Martinelli a lot, Madueke a lot, is what we saw from Bruno Guimaraes in the first half when he got in the box. Do you remember that bit where Madueke does a kind of a Cruyff flick around the corner? Bruno Guimaraes gets in that kind of corner of the box. He could drive it across goal first time. He could shoot. He goes one more. He looks again. No one's there. He goes one more. He nearly knocks out a play. And when he gets the byline, he just has to pull it back to no one. Whereas someone like Solis, what he's doing there is he's making that decision quick. And he's making kind of those decisions that the top players do, that it's almost like an on and off beat. That pass to Odegaard, no one expects him to just play the ball like a straight pass through them. They think he's going to go beyond the player and try and cross it, or he's going to come in field and cross it, or go backwards. You don't expect the guy to kind of cut in field and then instantly pass it, like second touch pass. It's just a bizarre kind of movement, and something like that is maybe eventually will be defended well against, because they would learn that, in those first 2-3 touches he's looking to move the ball on. So you need to be tight immediately and make a tackle early. But that's also good, because if they start doing that, you might be able to shift past him with a bit of skill. He definitely wanted assists over goals. He cut in on one, and he's got a good right foot on him. Tried to do an overlap to Calafiori. Calafiori gets a little contact from the goalie and goes down, which you don't like. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see that. People going down that easily. But nearly a penalty, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't. But he could have shot, and he wanted that overlap, and those things will come, But I just like the speed. Even the goal, I think it might have been the goal we score, the first goal. He kind of does like a crossfield pass after his second touch to Madueke. He just moves the ball on quick, and that was something that we really struggled with last year. Was especially when teams we got into a low block, was we take 2-3 touches and we'd slowly walk and then we'd pass. The other team just shift over, whereas he gives you no time to shift. He kind of moves the ball gone. Wherever it is, even if it is going backwards, he does it quick. It doesn't let the other team settle. And that's really good. And another debutant yesterday was Bruno Guimaraes, who very similar. His brain is, when he gets that ball, is how can I progress the ball forward? Then it goes to, all right, nothing on. Can I look for a 1-2 and then look forward? All right, that's not on. Now I'll go backwards. It's a breath of fresh air too, and I love Declan Rice and I like Zubimendi. But they both, I think their first thought is steady. Let's be steady. Let's keep the ball moving, but not necessarily forward. And people like Rodri and that, they're also kings of that style. And, there's a reason why we won the league last year. It's probably because the difference between Partey and Zubimendi was Partey only wanted to go forward. So there are negatives that come with it, especially in that sixth role. But Zubimendi was just steady, kept the ball ticking, the tempo from his announcement video. He keeps the ball moving, but sometimes he's so set in that way, there's an opportunity and he doesn't take it. Whereas Bruno Guimaraes is the opposite. He wants to go forward. Nothing on, I have to go back. But he does it in kind of a calm way that was very very different to what Thomas Partey was doing when he was at Arsenal. It's the closest thing I can see to Granit Xhaka. Look forward. Is there an option? Can I break the lines? Can I find someone? Can I look for a combination? All right, now I'll go back. That's the order of business you want to accept. You do need a Zubimendi in your team or a Declan Rice that goes, all right, I'll move this to a player that's better with his feet. And Bruno Guimaraes isn't that. He is the guy that you pass the ball to then look forward. So it's a benefit of where he plays. But the thing I noticed with the two players is Saka, Odegaard and White, they have this kind of kinship, don't they? They kind of have this kind of chemistry that you almost feel like, when they're in that triangle, that someone's overlapping someone and there's kind of fake runs infield and outfield, and before you know it, someone gets slid in. And Odegaard's this type of player that no matter what, when he's got the ball, you feel like anything's possible. And we haven't seen that for a year or so because he's, he had a baby, he's had a couple injuries to his legs, to his shoulders, things that were going to stop him from kind of necessarily breaking that team apart and kind of really making it look strong. But what I liked was Bruno Guimaraes, even though he's a left-sided 8, technically they were both shifting, him and Odegaard, but you could tell it wasn't kind of forced. It wasn't kind of, there was no argument. They just knew where each other were, and they were knocking it to even Lewis Skelly, who I thought was unbelievable again. And it'd be absolute criminal if we lose him, and we will get to him because I think he was a standout player. But Odegaard would kind of like look in. It reminded me of the Xhaka role. He got it, and he got into positions, and they were looking, constantly kind of looking for each other. Odegaard, even Madueke, Guimaraes, Lewis Skelly, like almost like they were tiptoeing over, looking over the other players, like, oh, you're there. How do I get that to you? And they were a little one around the corner, and then he's here. Then they've rotated one more time. All of a sudden, some guys made a run, and Odegaard's picked him up. And that's what I love about Odegaard is you always felt like when he got the ball, he'll pick that pass that no one else in the team can. Last couple of years, we haven't seen it as much. But yesterday, in the World Cup particularly, it really feels like he's coming back into what he was. The Odegaard we absolutely all fell in love with 4 or 5 years ago now. He is such a good player. He's such a good player. And the way, and even there was a bit, I don't know if you remember, there was a really good bit of interplay on the left-hand side in the second half. And eventually it comes in field, and Odegaard's there, and I think it's Rico Lewis, kind of shifts his body weight, beats him, and there's another guy coming, and he just he knows he just got to get a toe to it and knock it infield to the next player. But he's in the left channel. At this point, Declan Rice is on. The only player that should really be there is himself. He's not in the wrong position, but he had rotated into the left channel where he usually occupies the right. He knocks it infield, and who's standing there on the centre spot is Solis, the left winger. And then he grabs it, he shifts it one more time to Saka, and we're away. And this reminds me so much of that year where we played with Xhaka, the really fun year where we came second, where it felt like in every major game we were doing that weird kind of, it was like a diagonal pass, but in a chain. It was like 6-yard pass, 10-yard pass, 15-yard pass. All of a sudden it gets to Saka, and he's one-on-one. And we saw it so often, and that's how Martinelli got a lot of his goals as well, in the reverse of that kind of move. So seeing that brought me back to that. And I think last year we got away from it a little bit with kind of a bit more stagnant, a little bit kind of, especially when Odegaard's not in team. I love Eze. I think he's an unbelievable player, but he's more of he's a lower touch player than Odegaard. Odegaard's a high touch player. Bruno Guimaraes is a high touch player. Lewis Skelly is a high touch player. You add Saka and Ben White, or Timber even, that side is going to be unplayable at times, I really believe. And as long as someone's making smart runs up front, and then the best part is that position that Solis got in was the Alexis Sanchez position from Ozil. That back post, header it back across, score a goal from there, whatever it is. And it happened later on when Madueke made a cross, and I think it was Solis comes infield, and who's left completely alone at the back post, Calafiori, and he kind of volleys it over. That overload is... There were some signs like that are really good. And again, teams will defend it. And this is a City team that didn't drop into a low block or even a medium block. They were trying to play. So there was space everywhere. They just weren't as clinical. But what I love is, I don't know how much Semenyo was, 70, 80 million, whatever it was. He didn't impact the game massively. 60, 70 million, Doku didn't do it. The £1 million a week man, Haaland, didn't quite do it. The Elliot Anderson, 116 million in midfield, couldn't quite do it. But £34 million Solis was unbelievable in the game. £30 million Odegaard was unbelievable in the game. Hale End owned for free. Lewis Skelly was unbelievable. And I really liked that kind of... And again, that is a very biased view. And I know, if you're not an Arsenal fan, you'd be sitting there going, yeah, but what about £75 million Bruno Guimaraes, or £60 million Havertz, or £55 million Madueke, whatever it is. But it's very different. And like I said, at the start, people saw that lineup and they went, oof, God, they're going to put us through Solis from the Belgian league. Madueke of all people, and Kai Havertz the donkey. That's what I saw online. They think those three are going to damage this City team. Yeah, well, they are. Because it's not an individual sport. You see it with Haaland, is they try so hard just to get him the ball, and they've done that really well with people like Rodri, De Bruyne, David Silva, I think it was before Haaland, but Bernardo Silva, top players. Whereas those players are gone. And he's now got out of form Phil Foden trying to find him. Kovacic, who's not, I don't believe, at the level. Elliot Anderson, who's occupying a right 8/wing space between the fullback and the right winger for whatever reason, nearly that whole half. They got a Donnarumma, and Maresca seems to be more adamant on playing out from the back than Pep Guardiola ever was. But he's doing it with Donnarumma. And this is what Donnarumma is one of the biggest mistakes Pep Guardiola made. I think Trafford was a much better keeper. Donnarumma keeps you in games because he's an unbelievable goalkeeper. He does not want it at his feet. We saw it at the Etihad last year when Havertz caught him trying to clear it, and we scored from it, directly from it. Havertz caught him yesterday. He put them in danger constantly. And I think the Havertz header, I think he doesn't do great with. I think the Odegaard goal is genuinely some of the biggest clowning I've seen at a high level in a long time. It reminds me of I think it was the Aubameyang goal against Chelsea. It was the FA Cup final where it was in COVID, when he drags it and chips it, and you can hear someone laugh. I think it was Maitland-Niles or someone laugh as it chipped him. This one is hilarious because Odegaard and Havertz are actively laughing before it's gone in. It's a training goal. It's what you do in training as a bit of fun. It's what Fernandes should have done for West Ham last year, and it probably would have cost us the league. But that's a high-end player. That's a player playing with confidence, who's enjoying it. Even the way he reaches it in an athletic level, Solis cuts in, he does that ball, he kind of just gets his toe to it just to knock it away from the defender, just so he knows he can get a minute to get a shot away. He fakes it, then he shoots. All of it was very not what we've seen from Odegaard. The confidence, the athleticism to even reach that ball. I feel like last year he wouldn't have made that ball. He'd have been worried about stretching. Something like, I think it just felt different. And he's not the most athletically gifted player in the world. Nor is Bruno Guimaraes, nor is Lewis Skelly. That's what's really interesting about that midfield. But they want to play football. And I wonder if this was a really good indication of what kind of Arteta said, which is he wants to play more expansive football. He couldn't do it last year because of the injuries or the personnel. The fact that he played Lewis Skelly in that Champions League final, the fact that he's played Lewis Skelly, Bruno Guimaraes and Odegaard, and he could have easily have dropped Havertz into that midfield, could have brought Moreno in, he could have gone, do you know what, I'm going to have to start Declan Rice with Bruno Guimaraes because I'm just worried. Could have played Zuma Mendy. He could have done so many things to not be as open. But I'm hoping it was a massive lesson in, if you keep making vertical passes, teams don't like it and they won't attack you as much. And Man City did have spells. And what I loved about it was we were so resolute defensively again, as we were last year. But what was amazing was once they did I think Semenyo got a good shot away. I think Haaland got a good shot away. Anytime they did ever penetrate fully, Raya just made an unbelievable save. And it must be so demoralising for other teams when, I think Fabregas even talked about it in our press conference. He said everything they're doing is very high end. And you saw a lot of managers last year going, I can't explain it. It's very difficult. We've seen players like Aina from Forest and some others who have come out and said, oh, it's horrific. It's horrible to play. They're impossible to play. And not just that, they're also a bit like, we're a little bit, as some would say, dark artsy. We've got a little bit of, we're nasty, there's a nasty element to it. They're very good. They're doing a lot of rotations. They're doing a lot of defensive work that is really annoying for other teams. But then we're a little bit nasty on top. Then we're also winning. Then we're also annoying in winning. We're bad winners, that kind of what people see anyway. All of it's not fun. But that must be so demoralizing. You can't penetrate. They're such an awkward team. You're trying to figure it out and you finally get a chance. And David Raya just makes a save and you're thinking, how do we get through this? And people are going to. I'm not saying this is, we won the Community Shield, we're going to win the league. I don't know. I really don't know. We haven't seen any of the other teams. City will get better. There's a lot. But it was a really good sign that Arteta showed, and maybe, because I've said, sometimes there's a difference between what he says and what he does. And I think it's the same with the players. I think some of the players say, I'd say that the players kind of buried themselves a little bit in the past where Arteta is running around the touchline saying, please go forward. And then the players aren't. And we saw it later on in this game, like I said earlier, with the Zubimendi and Rice. There was 2 moments, I wish I could find them and clip them, where they had the opportunity to go forward. They went backwards. The Zubimendi one was really interesting because he plays it. I think Odegaard goes and collects the ball. And we've had the ball for a couple seconds here. He collects the ball. He drives through. We break the press. He plays it to Zubimendi, who's got like maybe 5 yards of space. And Odegaard goes around the corner. All he has to do is play it back to him, but around the player. And literally the pitch is open. He's away and he's on the right channel. He's going to look for Saka. We've got men over. And he almost goes to do it and then just plays it backwards. And you see Odegaard just throw his arms up like, what are we doing? And what I love is that's what I want from us. I think it's unbelievable that we won the league. I think it's unbelievable that we did everything we did. But what I want to see next is that evolution of the attack. I want to see, and I do think it was massively hindered last year because of Odegaard missing and Havertz missing, I think, is a huge part. I think he's not the world's greatest forward. He turns up at big games like Champions League finals and the game yesterday, Cup finals, Man City games. Generally, he scores. But the way he plays, and I talked about the connection between Lewis Skelly, Gomes, Odegaard, even Madueke, Solis. You can kind of see there's there's such a cohesion. But he's a part of that. The way in which you press him and Odegaard, almost like telepathic. Whereas with Gyökeres, we don't have that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You need those players. You need a Madueke. You need, I think, a Martinelli. I think you need a Gyökeres. You need to do that kind of things you wouldn't naturally expect our players to do or necessarily want them to do. But they do things that are different. It keeps the other teams on their toes, whereas you can kind of get used to how well we play. If you think back to the day where Fabregas and Giroud and Wilshere and all these guys, they played unbelievable football. But we didn't win games all the time. But the football was gorgeous. And I think with those guys in the team, it's gorgeous, but also we win. So it's beneficial. But when we don't, here's, an absolute sledgehammer in Gyökeres. Here's a wild card like Madueke and Martinelli hitting the byline, or sometimes missing the byline. And again, also in big games, here's Zubamendi to slow it down. You're not going to get the ball. We're going to keep it moving. We don't necessarily go forward, but it's going to stop the game. You need those types of players. Yeah, there's an 11 in our head that we're going, oh, that's nice. That's the next part of all this is 3 players missed out in the whole squad. And that was Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Martinelli, and Ethan Nwaneri. They all missed the game yesterday because, is it speculation? But the way I see it is, how would they fit in that team? Who would you have dropped? Because I just read out, this is the level we're at now, and the squad yesterday really terrified me in a good way. I realised just how good we are because this team that we put out, I think, is world class. Maybe a Madueke for a downman to make it happier for me, but we went with David Raya, Ben White, Mosquera, Gabriel Magalhaes, Calafiori, Odegaard, Bruno Gomes, Lewis Skelly, Solis, Madueke, and Havertz. This was our bench. Was Kepa, Hincapi, Saka, Eza, Gyökeres, Zubamendi, Rice, Marino, and Max Dalman. And only Kepa, Marino, and Max Dalman weren't used. That's not normal. That squad is not normal because Marino and Dalman should get minutes. But I couldn't take them off of Saka, Eza, Gyökeres, Zubamendi, Rice, or Hincapi. And there's no one in that 11 that I would take minutes off there. Maybe in a perfect world, I wouldn't necessarily have Madueke at the club, maybe, and Dalman would be getting those minutes. But again, there is an element of, there is something different. A 16-year-old to a 24, 25-year-old who's got experience, there's probably a difference. Maybe we don't, we get frustrated when he doesn't beat his man, or he does beat his man a lot but misses the byline. We're more excited about Dalman. There's a lot of things like that. But I'm sure there's other things he's doing that mean he's probably more suited. And, a team that beats Man City 3-0 is not something to stuff your nose at. The other thing is, the players missing from there are Jesus, Martinelli, Nwaneri. They're clearly missing. We've also got Vieira, Nelson, who need to get moved on. We've also got injured Timber, Saliba. This is a squad that Timber and Saliba need to be on that bench. Who do you remove? That's how deep this squad is. Because realistically, I think the 9 on the bench there, plus Timber and Saliba, there's no one on that field that I would remove from the squad. Mosquera's proved his level. Saliba, I don't think is going to be available until January, personally. So that's one to remove. Timber will be back. Who on that bench gets away? And that's without putting Nwaneri on the bench. That's without Gabriel, Martinelli, and Jesus. None of those guys are making a bench. I know that Jesus, 18 million to Napoli looks likely. I know that Nwaneri looks like it could be a loan to Aston Villa. There's a lot of conversation today. I think that'd be a great move for him if he could. I love Nwaneri on a loan. I think that guy at 21 is going to be unplayable. But this squad's not really allowing someone to be in that team. Then Martinelli, if we can get a deal done. But the only problem with that is the left side. As good as that squad is, where is your left wingers? Solis and then Eza at a push, but he hasn't been great over there. You don't necessarily want to do that. And that's why I think you see these talks of, because let's say we remove Nwaneri, Martinelli and Jesus. Let's say we remove Fabio Vieira and Nelson. Cool, those 5 are gone. Saliba and Timber need to get in there. So realistically, you need probably one out, one in type thoughts there left. I think this is why we're seeing the talk of Lewis Skelly, because I think that's the only position where he's thinking, well, we need an extra left winger, so Martinelli can't go. One, we can also get a massive amount of money for Lewis Skelly. But who else would go? Like, who would you sell from that group? I know some people would say someone like Gyökeres. We'd have one centre forward then. Let's talk about Osman coming in. Where does he fit? It's such an unbelievable squad, because this is not normal. I don't think this is normal for any of the top leagues in the history of football. I don't think it's often you get that good a squad that is that deep. And you do need the depth, because like the redundant talk of, what's your starting 11 or best 11? There's no such thing, because Saliba's injured until January. Timber might not be back for 3-4 more weeks. Declan Rice isn't fit. Give it a month, and let's say Moreno, Rice, Moreno, Lewis Skelly, and Madueke all injured. All of a sudden, you get a salmon on the bench. So, it's very rare. It's rare that you go into a season this well prepared, and we're still missing two of our best defenders. Potentially our two best defenders. But we still look good. To give you an idea, in the history of kind of the way in which football goes, is usually you have a very good squad, a very good first 11, then you have 4 or 5 great players on the bench, or good players. Then you have a couple of players where you go, I don't know. I don't know where we stand with this. When you look at City's team, they went with Donnarumma, Kosanov, Diaz, Gvardiol, O'Reilly, Anderson, Kovacic and Foden, Semenyo, Doku and Haaland. And then on the bench, they had Rulli, Reece, Aït-Nouri, Rico Lewis, Grealish, Nico Gonzalez, Cherki, Marmoush and Gay. It's a very good bench. I would say ours is a touch better. And that is their squad as it stands. I don't believe, there's talk of Boadi, there's talk of Enzo Fernandez. But that would need, they've just lost Reinders. Looks like Rodri's just gone to Barcelona officially. There's players missing, Bernardo Silva. So their squad is actually better suited this year, because it allows people like Rico Lewis to make the bench. Because they've got an actually inflated squad as well as us. But I don't think the level's the same. When, if we just went from yesterday, who would you pick? Usually with City, Arsenal is usually about, 7-4 City, usually. But I mean, as of right now, Donnarumma or Raya, you got to go Raya. Ben White or Kusanov at right back. I want to go Ben White over Kusanov at right back. Kusanov at centre back is decent, but at right back I'd go Ben White. Mosquera versus Ruben Diaz, you probably say Diaz. Gvardiol versus Gabriel, you go Gabriel. Calafiori beats O'Reilly. Odegaard over Foden. Lewis Skelly over Kovacic. Bruno Guimaraes Anderson is very tight, but I'd still say Bruno Guimaraes. And then up front, I think Haaland over Havertz. I'd actually say all three of their front three would be, on paper, your better front three. But you're looking at 4 to them and 7 to us. That switch has happened, because even on the bench, when you look at the bench, it's so, I think, one-sided, because that wasn't by any means our best 11. And I just think it's rare. We're in rarefied air right now where you're very good. The squad is good. But there's also usually you'd have to make change and you go, oh, it's a massive downgrade. Or like, you'd have like, no, this is harsh, but you'd have like an El Nani come on. You go, oh, El Nani's on, so I guess that's the end of the game. Whereas yesterday we're bringing on Zubmendi and Rice, the two central midfielders that took us to a league title last year. Bringing on Gyökeres, our top goal scorer. Eze, who's one of our favourite players. Saka, who might be our best player. Hincapi, who was unbelievable last year. So you're only improving the team as the game goes on. And that's pretty much rare, I think, in any of the European leagues, but particularly in the Premier League, you just don't see it. So the squad looks good. The only goal I don't think I've really spoken about is the first one, which is really interesting because it's the Lewis Skelly goal. 26 seconds, Calafiori scores. But that pass from Lewis Skelly, honestly, that sums up that player. He's on such a different level as far as like vision. Even Calafiori said he's the only player on the field that would have seen that. And I mean, for other professionals at that level to say that about a 19-year-old. And also, they're all pointing at him after the goal. In the training pitches, they're all pointing at him. They're obviously all very annoyed at even the concept of him leaving. Squad-wise, I get the fact that we're overly bloated and we can't guarantee minutes. Because we were just talking about how do some of these like Sleeper and Timber come in? We'd have to lose Moreno and Dowman potentially from that bench. They're top players that we can't. They need to be playing. And again, you have multiple. Every 3 days you're playing in different competitions. So there's certain players that get like Rice comes completely out of the squad, and also Moreno's back in. He's starting, and other players go on the bench. You need that 11. And then you need a second 11. And I think we have an exact second 11. Meslier is another one that didn't even make the bench. But when you look at the 11, you can almost 100% replace that 11 and be competitive, I think, in the Premier League to win it. That's high end. Timber and Sleeper come back. I get why they can't guarantee the minutes to Waneri, and I think a loan no would make most sense. If not, maybe 40-50 million with a buyback of 60-70 million, and a 10% sell-on clause or something, because that's the best way of finding out, is he Smith Rowe and Willock and these guys, or is he Saka? That we don't know. But the concept of Lewis Skelly making a direct rival stronger is absolutely ludicrous. And I don't know where this all started. I don't know if it's Lewis Skelly's people. I've heard a report that it's Lewis Skelly's people and, Arteta's not happy about it. And Lewis Skelly's not necessarily happy about it, hence why he's apologising and all that. There's talk that it's Arsenal actively reaching out and saying, does anyone want him? And it's not even organic. It's not even Chelsea and Man United have reached out and said, could we have that player? We've gone, do you want him? And they've gone, Chelsea have already got a load of them. Man United have already replaced, without removing Mainu or Santos or one of these guys. They don't need him. So it's just interesting. And now I think Man United have been offered Wharton from Palace. I don't know what's going on with Palace. Very odd. But the idea of losing him, that pass just summed up his overall play. The fact he's 19, he's almost playing, he's holding the midfield against Man City in the Champions League final against PSG, and he's doing it well. The PSG game we were 1-2 penalties away from winning that, and also we were 20-year-old for 13 million playing out of position mistake away from winning 1-0 with him at the helm in that midfield. He's an unreal player, and if I step back and didn't read any rumours, the way in which he plays him and trusts him in giant matches tells me he's Arteta's favourite player, and there's no way we're selling him. The news is making me question it all. But I think if there was real conversation of him leaving, he wouldn't have played that game. He could have started Rice and then removed him for Zubimendi halfway. They both had a half in them. I don't think he was forced into that. There was people like Moreno who could have come in for a period of time. Gomeres could have played the 6. There were so many options. And speaking of Gomeres, did have an ice pack on his leg. Calafiori said a weird kind of comment where he said Christos Solis played unbelievable, one of the best players in the field, and Bruno Gomeres was really good. And he said, I don't know what happened, but he came off at half time, which is just. He said maybe he's not fit. He said something like that, I think. I don't think it's a fitness thing. He had ice on his side. I think he's not going to be available for Coventry. Or he just started to feel something and thought, I don't want to get ahead of this. Let's not. And this is a guy who pretty much is never injured until last year at Newcastle. He started to pick up some injuries for the first time in his career. Big worry if we do. And it was a big reminder yesterday that he isn't the fastest player. But when you've got someone like Declan Rice cleaning up for you, that's not a problem. Because the way in which he manipulates the ball and the way he breaks presses, and we're press resistant with him in the team. Because with Rice, you're not press resistant. Zubimendi, you are. Gomeres, you are. Lewis Skelly, you are. But Rice is different on a whole different plane to all three of those players as far as athleticism and certain defensive intelligence and stuff like that. And also creeping into the box a little bit. So I think in certain big games, even though this was a big game, I think maybe like a Liverpool where I think you're going to see Rice and Gomeres together. I think Coventry this week, I think you're going to see a similar midfield, but maybe Rice in for Gomeres. But Lewis Skelly's in there with Odegaard. I'd love to see Saka start. I don't want to see Madueke necessarily start. I think you'll see a very similar team, though. Maybe just Rice for Gomeres and maybe Saka for Madueke. And I think that's an unbelievable 11 on a Friday night at home against Coventry. It was such a good performance. I felt it coming from... When I finished that game, I just thought, God, we're good. We are good. It's the first time, even though we won the league, it's the first time, and I know against the Carabao Cup final, I felt that way after about 30 minutes, and I thought, then it didn't end the way I wanted. That was true, because when you look at City, when Maresca, I think Maresca's a good manager. That was a human City, a very human City. If that team play that way at the weekend against Bournemouth, they will lose. The recruitment is odd. I think they're massively missing top-level midfielders, because if Kovacic and Anderson aren't available, that midfield is Rico Lewis and Nico Gonzalez. I mean, if Foden's not available, it's Cherky. Marmoush and Grealish are the winger options. Up front, no options. Defence, Aït-Nouri, Rico Lewis can kind of fill in a job. And Gahey didn't even make the first 11. So it's just some odd stuff, and I just thought they were doing some really weird stuff, especially with Donnarumma at the back. They were trying to break that press, but it's so easy to figure that out, because what we were doing in the in the Carabao Cup final to them was what we did to them. What they did to us in the Carabao Cup final is what we did to them, where we pressed, but we stood still kind of in front of Donnarumma and let him chip it over us. And our fullbacks just jumped up on the next phase of play and just kind of won the ball. And it's so simple. And with Pep, that would never have happened. He would have thought about that. Because again, Arteta's a very, very good manager. He's now proving it. And Maresca's a great manager. He needs to prove it a bit more. Pep is the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. So to lose that, they look instantly human. But they did find times they slid Haaland in against our very good defence. They will find that space. Semenyo will be better. Doku will be better. Foden will grow into it. Anderson will understand his role. But the role they had him in was not what you want to do with a player of his stature, and they're not pairing him with someone good enough. And I know there's talk of Boadin, there's talk of someone else, Enzo. That will definitely improve them, but they're going to have to move on a lot of players. And probably Grealish, Marmoush, Savinho to fill that. And then their options up front would be Haaland, Semenyo and Doku. Then pretty much no one. So they're in a very odd position, and I can't see Haaland staying post-Pep that long. And you remove Haaland from that team, what is there overly to fear? The defence is okay. The midfield is okay. Without Haaland, if you put Igor Thiago from Brentford up there, that's a very good team that are going to come sixth. Honestly, I really believe that. Do I think they're going to challenge for the title this year? I don't. This could come back and haunt me, I'm sure. And I'm not saying they won't necessarily figure it out. But there was something really evidently missing. It wasn't just personnel. It wasn't just the style of play was odd. The aggression was not there. That kind of heartbeat, that Rodri, Bernardo Silva, Pep, I feel like you've removed like the heart. And yeah, the other player, that 11 is world class. The 11 I'm looking at right now is world class. But there was something else missing. There was not a vibe of a together team like Arsenal have. And again, because when you on paper, that front three is miles better than the guy from the Belgian league, Madueke and Havertz. £116 million signing at the base of midfield versus a HLM product on our end. It's very different. Two veteran Premier League tested midfielders, Bruno Guimaraes, Kovacic, fairly level. A lot of people would agree. Foden and Odegaard, a lot of people would pick Foden. So, like I said, when people saw the lineups, it was quite clear that they were like City going to smash them here. But football's not about individuals. It's about the way in which the team galvanise. And it could have been more evident yesterday. We were working in perfect combinations. And that's actually something that was missing a lot last year. And again, it's a Community Shield. Nothing to overly get, we've won the league. And the commentators started getting a bit like near the end saying like, Frank Lampard might as Ali McCoy said, just throw another Yorkshire on the roast. Don't worry about it. And I it's nice to be that team. Me and my dad always joke, like back in the day when Mourinho was at Chelsea, they always had their shirts tucked in, their chests out, shoulders back. And it was really annoying because they were just winning. They didn't concede. They were really annoying, just unlikable group. We are them now. And I don't think that's happened in my lifetime. And we've had invincibles that were annoying to people, but we were beatable, but we were unbeaten. If that makes sense. We played very good football around the years. The unbeaten season was the worst time we ever played football, which is ironic because 22 years later, I think the worst time we played football in the last 5 seasons, I would say, is last season. It was one of our worst football. We won the league. But if we can become the team that play the really good football but also get over the line, this team's legendary. This team's historic going back to back. I think it beats the unbeaten season. I think it beats George Graham's era. It goes back to Herbert Chapman era, which I think is just so far, even if it was unbelievable, it's just such a different sport now. that's the difference. This team can go to another level, and when you look around, everyone is in transition, and yeah, someone could really click. Chelsea could click playing every 7 days opposed to everyone else with a massive squad and a great manager. But it's going to take, you would expect it to take a little time. I mean, I know Mourinho came in and won it straight away like Alonso could, but that's going to take some beating. Unless Arsenal massively dip, get a lot of injuries or something changes, that's a good side, a very good team that could really do a number on a lot of teams. But a league season is very long, and you're going to have dips. You're going to have moments. You're going to have moments like last year where set pieces get over the line. Sometimes you're going to have moments where we play unbelievable football. Sometimes where we're going to just have to dig in and just hope for the best, because I do genuinely believe, as good as that team is, you remove Odegaard and you remove maybe Saka, and Ez is trying to find Madueke, I think that you can lose a lot of that. I think Odegaard is that heartbeat. That's why he's the captain. And it's so evident when he plays, and he plays well, just how good a player he is. I can't go over how good a performance that was from Odegaard. And it's the Odegaard we saw at West Ham away 4 years ago that made us want him to stay. And it's the Odegaard I hope to see all season, because he's due a full Odegaard season where he gets 15 goals, 10 assists. He's just running teams ragged, because the type of football we were playing, that we could play with that team, it's just unreal, because we can morph into just a horrible defensive unit, and we can also become very kind of vertical with our wingers and our forward, and we can also manipulate the ball and keep the possession. We can also have low touch and win on counter-attacks. There's so much that comes with that squad. It's almost as perfect a squad as you can get. It's perfect a group you can get. And it doesn't mean I don't think we should go buy a player, but I just don't know where to get in. A lot of people saying Waneri should have made a bench. Who would you remove? I really don't know who you can remove, because that's how good the squad is. And that's why I think there could be a major sale. And I think maybe we might have to accept that, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if Vieira, Nelson, Jesus go for a combined 30 million, or even less than that, 25 million. But you get 45 million for Martinelli, and then you get 45 million for Waneri. That'd be 115, 120 million in. And this is a season where we've bought Hincapi and Soles for a combined 70 million, and then 70 million for Bruno Guimaraes. Our net spend would be about 20 million. And I don't necessarily think we have to replace. I think if Eza becomes I think you almost make Eza the left wing option behind Soles, and you also potentially make Dalman the 10 option behind Odegaard instead, and kind of multiple options for Dalman, because he could play in his position or he could play out wide. And if Saka is injured again, or Madueke is out of form, Dalman could play those minutes. I worry about not having a left wing option. I think Martinelli does need to be in that squad, but I don't think I'm against at this point when Waneri and Jesus and Vieira and Nelson all going. But I can't figure out, and I think it'd be criminal to lose Lewis Skelly, but I can understand them trying to offload one more player for big money. And I know the balance is wrong, because we can afford to lose Lewis Skelly, and we can't really Martinelli because we need a left wing option. But I don't think we can afford it, because I think we bought Bruno Guimaraes in to replace Norgard to lift the level of that midfield, but also take the load off of Rice. If we lose Lewis Skelly, I think Rice is, if anything, bigger load. And I know he said yesterday that he's someone who wants to play 70 games this season. Eventually his body will just give out. We won't have a good asset or a good player or a good anything. So I think you keep him. Lewis Skelly's proved that if you're good enough, you'll keep top players out of that team. Because I think if we were starting the season on Friday and there was no injury to Bruno Guimaraes potentially, I think Rice is on the bench until someone gives him a reason to put him back in. And I think that's how it should be. And I like that competition. I like the fact that, Madueke didn't do much with his opportunity. Solis did. Solis shouldn't lose that opportunity. Solis is the left winger now. If in Coventry he's not great, if the game after he's not great, give someone else an opportunity. But he just grabbed that opportunity. It's rare for a guy to come in for 34 million in the current market and get 2 assists against Man City in his first professional, proper not professional game, but first competitive game in the Premier League, coming from the Belgian league, they said. And again, he could also never get an assist again. I don't know. So I don't want to hang my hat on it, but there was a lot of promising things. The speed, everything. I just loved it. And I think there was an element of also the double whammy of City look average. And yeah, of course they're going to figure it out. Of course they're going to come back. I can't wait for this weekend to get my eyes on Man United, Tottenham. Because Tottenham are a team that you're now thinking about because they spent so much money. But money doesn't always mean anything. They've got a good manager. They're going to be a problem. They're going to be harder to deal with than they have been. Man United, I think in pre-season they haven't really fixed the problems they've got. They're a couple attacking injuries away from, I think, really struggling. But Chelsea are the one that I've really got my eye on. Liverpool, I think the squad might be their downfall eventually. They've got a great manager, a great team, but the squad is the problem. Chelsea, I don't know what their problem could ever be because they've got all the players they could want. They've got a good manager. They've got 7 days rest between every match, pretty much. There's no reason why Chelsea shouldn't have a go there at the title. But we've never had a better opportunity to go back to back. I don't know if we ever will do again. So I think it's about seeing this season off in a way where we just grab the ball by the horns and we do everything in our power to go back to back and keep that deep squad. And yes, some players are going to be unhappy, but they're not going to be unhappy when they lift the trophy at the end of the season or trophies. So I think some people will be willing to, instead of playing 60 games, play 40 games. Some people that are expecting to play 40 games might have to play 20 games. I think players will do it because they like the club, they like the players, and they like the fact they could win. So a lot of players will do that because at the end of their career, all you got is the money you earn and the trophies you won. That's really it. So, I mean, they're all going to make the money, but they would love to have something to show for it, I'm sure. So that's a huge bonus for us, that squad. But on Wednesday, I'm going to go deep into how I think everyone's going to do. So it'll be kind of general Premier League on Wednesday. I think it'll be fun. Get us excited for Friday night because Friday night is the start. The Patreon at the end of the week will be the preview, obviously, to Coventry. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Sign up below this audio. It's £6 a month for the Patreon. Just look up Gunners R Us anywhere and you'll find it somewhere. Until then, enjoy yourself and hopefully enjoy that victory. We'll see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.